Let's do it. Hello, Galaxy fans. This is Matt Gray. I am the writer for The Striker. I cover the Galaxy, I also cover LAFC. Uh, to my right is Alex Ruiz. He's the beat writer for the Galaxy. And for The Striker, how's it going, buddy?
Going pretty good. Gotten used to the intro music now, so it's pretty nice. We're developing in our podcasting journey, just the start, but it's pretty good. I'm excited for this episode, Mike.
Me too. Right before I hopped on, I actually got a hold of Sarah Neal. And I was asking her about her tattoos because last time I talked to her, I thought she had 8, and it turns out she has 14. So that's pretty amazing. I mean, I have 1. Aren't I cool?
I don't have any tattoos,
Uh,
but I have like a scar on my leg, so that's something.
I'm not cool. And Chile ain't never been cool. All right. Now that I got that out of the way, let's see. Let's just jump right to it, Alex. We posted something about Dejan Joveljic earlier today, and we got a bit of pushback, which is to be fair. Let me go over it briefly. Alex posted a stat in the 17 games that Dejan Joveljic has started. Have 2 wins, 11 losses, and 4 draws for a win percentage of just over 15%. Now, like I said before, some people jumped in and agreed, like say Taylor Twellman, but we had the usual smart pundits, the people we trust, chime in with their own opinions. Michel, for example, his opinion was if Joveljic was on a better attack, such as NYCFC or, I believe in his words, God forbid, LAFC. Joveljic would obviously be performing a lot better. Our good friend Gio Garcia over at LA Soccer Hub, his opinion was that winless in 5, and therefore, it's a Galaxy problem. And then finally, Sean Steffen, who used to do stats over at the Houston Dynamo, this point, which is to point out that it's not reliable where Joveljic comes in, say, if Chicha doesn't start, or if there's or if it's a cup competition, or there's a lot of situations. There hasn't been a lot of ideal spots where Joveljic has been in a prime position to succeed. Put it that way. So for me, it's 3 things. 1, it's early. We're very early into the season. 2, the team has. They say the team. I was going to say the team has been poor, but they've been pretty good, all things considered. The issue is just that the attack's not efficient. And then that's my opinion. And then third, for me, it's just again, Joveljic hasn't been thrown into ideal situations, which is a bit what Sean Steffen was getting at. Now, if you ask me personally, Joveljic has a few flaws in this game. One thing I've noticed that I looked into is that he tends to be a bit weak with his verticality. What does that mean? Well, again, for example, me and Alex, we have notebooks. We like to take notes and just jot all sorts of stuff during the game. I noticed last game, was it 13th minute? He had a chance to bring down a ball, and he wasn't able to do so. 48th minute, second half, he had another golden opportunity where, if he just gets a touch on it, he can bring it down. He's got a real good opportunity. He wasn't that efficient on that either. And, I went back and looked at his goal total over the past 3 or so seasons. He's only got 1 header. Now, I briefly looked. I might have missed something, but it was the 88th minute versus Portland all the way back in, I believe, fall of 2011, or excuse me, 2021. And it's a play where he beats someone to the near post, and it's a good, tidy finish, but it's something that I would expect just when I went on the field to finish. And so, he's not the finished product as good as he's performed. Alex, for what I've seen, again, there's been plenty of points in the other direction, but for you and me, he hasn't passed the eye test, has he?
I mean, it's a mixed bag when it comes to his starts, because we know off the bench, he's such an impact player. He definitely gives a different dynamic for the Galaxy. I will say when I've posted this before, and obviously it was a very popular take to have at the time. But the thing is, this isn't a take; it's just the numbers, right? Like I'll get started, right? This stat isn't meant to kind of demean or say Jovic is a bad player because I've been on the record multiple times saying that I personally think he's a better striker overall than Chicharito Hernandez. And number two, like this is definitely like a team stat. It's not about him, but it's definitely one of those things where you kind of like notice it and there's a little bit of a correlation. It's not very strong, but I mean, if you have a win percentage of 15% with him on there, that's something to think about. I understand that the when people say like, look, this is a Galaxy problem, he hasn't been there to with the best when the team is at its best. We've seen him come off the bench to eat the last what 20, 15, 10 minutes so many times in his so many times off the bench. But in the moment that he does start, it's either due to injury or due to kind of just the team needing to find something new to kind of jumpstart themselves again. And I think it's so interesting because, you know, uh, it's hard for me to kind of assess Jovic lately because we know that this year the wingers situation has not been ideal. Efrain Alvarez hasn't really knocked it out of the park at all. Memo Rodriguez really has been subpar, nothing too special. Tyler Boyd, I think we're barely starting to see a little bit more of what he can do. And Douglas Costa obviously just played 12 minutes the last game, so it's not like he's done anything all year. I think just having one goal in these last 4 games that he's played in, still pretty good. He should have had another one, considering that Vancouver game where he was allegedly touched the ball with his hand and that took away the potential game-winning goal. Uh, Nonetheless, he's a good player. I just feel like at some point this stat's got to be worrying. I mean, when you're not able to get winning results with Jovic, we've seen him play with the best players currently on the Galaxy team so far. He's likely going to head into this Houston match as the starter, as Chicharito is likely going to maybe play in the second half to get some fitness back slowly. But I think it's just so interesting to see how he is a really good quality player, yet his team situation when he's on the pitch just isn't the best. And I'm just so like curious about that because we know that this team has a lot of good individual players. When it comes to the attacking side, we mentioned Ricky Puig, Gaston Brugman in the midfield, kind of doing everything there. Chicharito, Jovic. I mean, Douglas Costa has quality. Sure, he hasn't been able to rack up goals and assists, but he's got quality on the ball, and he's got some class that other players don't really have. So I'm just this is such an interesting conundrum for me because I'm like this guy is good. He's made he scored some amazing goals. He's got this great technical ability. Yet for some reason, like the winning wins elude him when he starts, and it's like it's so amazing. And I'm not saying this stat to kind of bash on Dayon or kind of say bad things about him. I'm just pointing out the correlations that are happening here.
Yeah. Do you think that there's pressure on the club and maybe specifically Greg Vanny? I mean, this is the third season that he's with the club. He came here from Eintracht Frankfurt. There was a lot of hype. He didn't come from the Bundesliga behind an aging Chicharito. And, the talking point last year was, okay, next year is going to be his time. Next year is going to be his time. We got about 3/4 of the way through the season, and then Chicharito replied on Twitter to Galaxy Guy and let us all know that that he had an extension for another year. I don't think there was anyone who was probably more internally annoyed about that than Jovic. So, I mean, if he doesn't perform this year and they still keep him as sort of a secondary option, I mean, how does that end up?
Yeah, it's so weird because we've seen this Galaxy team kind of go through a little bit of a youth revolution in some way. I mean, we've seen Julian Aude, Caligari come into the club, two young fullbacks. We've seen Jalen Neal to add to that youth in that sense. Ricky Puig, he's like what 23, 24 years old. He's a young player, up and coming player. Obviously, he's one of the better players on his Galaxy team. I think there's a good core here to build on, and I think if you're Jovic, when you kind of have to sit behind Chicharito for another year, it's definitely got to be annoying. I mean, this kid was scoring like what 15 goals in the Austrian Bundesliga. Like this guy was putting up numbers in Europe. He was a player that a lot of people had on their radar as a player with lots of potential, lots of upside. Comes to MLS, and let's remember and put some context to it. Like Jovic, I'm not gonna say he was an emergency signing, but when he was brought in, like Chicharito was hurt, and he missed a good portion of that 2021 season, if you remember. So it's not necessarily like he was a panic buy, but he was kind of expected at the time to kind of lift up the load and be able to kind of score some goals while Chicho was coming back. And I totally understand that kind of perspective. And hey, he's new to the team, came midway through that season last year, kind of built that super sub role where he was just amazing at it. And then this year, I just think I wouldn't say it's a lack of chemistry, but there just isn't enough connection there between Jovic and that midfield and those wingers. I was kind of looking at Jovic in games that he's played with Ricky Puig, right? Whether that's as a starter or coming off the bench. In 13 games that he's played with Ricky Puig, he's only scored 2 goals. And contrast that to Chicharito, who in 9 games with Ricky Puig, he's scored 7 goals. So either it's a lack of chemistry, the tactical setup isn't working for them. Those two just haven't been able. Puig and Jovic, those two haven't been able to kind of put it together and really combine too often. I mean, they did combine for another goal. I think it was against Vancouver, but it was called offside as well. Just those opportunities between those two, I think, really needs to grow. And if you can really build and harness that relationship that those two can have for this year, then that can definitely elevate Jovic and definitely help out Ricky Puig put up assists for the Galaxy.
Yeah, maybe the 3-5-2 can be Greg Vanny's out in this case. You and me have talked about it both on this podcast. Vanny is a very good coach. If he wants to really get the best out of the Galaxy, there's going to have to be complex situations that he's going to have to find solutions for. And he's got to get Jovic on the field, and he's got to figure out what formation's right, and so on and so forth. But let's see. I want to use the transition button, see how it works. Oh, there we go.
Sounds
All
nice.
right. Next topic. I was a little frustrated this week listening to the press conference, Alex. Julian Aude, whatever we're calling him. We were told last week that there was a passport issue. The visa process was settled. It was just a matter of getting his passport back. It was supposed to be Thursday, Friday, maybe Monday. We hear yesterday that he's going to get it back, and then the Houston game's just kind of a welcoming experience for Aude. We're talking about bond, 2 to 4 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, right?
Yep.
And then I'm listening to Vanny, and he's talking about how there's a healing period, and then the 2 to 4 weeks, and that it's projected to be okay, but he hasn't started diving yet. And I'm sitting here going like, 2 to 4 weeks. Oh, I thought you meant 2 to 4 weeks. And yes, the Galaxy have played well. The past 3 games, their expected goals has been better than their opponents, including Seattle, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking about time. How much time does the Galaxy have before they're reaching kind of a crisis point? Not just only with points, but next week's. I don't want to look ahead, but next week's going to be El Trafico, and if they don't solve this if they don't quell the supporters boycott in about 2 seconds, that's going to be a home game for LAFC. And if I really want to be honest, those games at Dignity, there's such a good fight between the two supporters. Man, I just worry what's going to happen if you just have all those and the 3-2-5-2 and just them dominating. And imagine if that spills out onto the field and the players, and you just have. And so again, I ask you, Alex, are the Galaxy at a crisis point or potentially nearing a crisis point?
I feel like it's kind of in those cartoons, right? Where, they're on the train and then, oh, the train tracks end and there's a cliff right there, right? It feels like we're heading in that direction at this moment right now. I know that I heard a couple days ago that the supporter groups in the Galaxy would be meeting today about something. Kind of one of the first communications they've had in a long time. So we'll see what comes out of that in these next couple of days. When it comes to the crisis point on the field, you definitely have to add the context to this Galaxy team. This isn't the same Galaxy team from last year. Let's make that 100% clear. You lost your 2 starting wingers. You have 2 of your designated players hurt. Right now, it's kind of not necessarily retooling, but it's kind of just being able to grind these games out and collect as many points as you can. And obviously, with the way the Galaxy ended the year playing some great soccer, it's definitely disappointing to see in that regard. But right now, I'm going to be patient with this team and give it some time because, again, there's so much time left in the season. And I understand, you kind of don't want to have to depend on, the rest of the year and, not have that additional pressure later on in the season. But let's be honest, like, MLS has expanded the playoffs to 9 spots for each conference. I'm 100% sure the Galaxy are, one of the top 9 teams in the Western Conference. At some point in the year, they're probably likely, in my opinion, going to play like one of the best teams in all of Major League Soccer. I think as time goes by, the points will pick up. I think you will see what goes on across the Western Conference, and I think this team will be in a playoff position. But like I said earlier, right now we're kind of just, seeing that train track come to a close right now. And if, the road stays the same, then we're going to be falling down.
Agreed, Alex. We have talked about Will Kuntz. We still haven't heard an official announcement from him. It's funny how he's become a bit of a, even though they had him from on the field, it's the optics that are so important right now. I don't think that the Will Kuntz hiring by itself is going to fix the perception. Uh, it's interesting because we've talked about it several times. They're not going to fire him. So the only way this makes any sense is if they have some sort of compromise, and the compromise is Kuntz. I'm very, very high on Kuntz. He's got a proven track record of success from being a whiz kid with the Yankees for a decade. He actually went and butted heads with Don Thornton when he was the director of player relations for the MLS Players Association. Thornton was so impressed he actually asked him out to lunch, and then he explains his vision for what he wants a team to be because what was it, finance? I forgot the exact. When he worked at the league office, he specialized in like salary cap stuff. So this is a guy who knows what he's doing. He gets hired by LAFC. They have 5 years of unprecedented success. They transfers. They're making money. Kuntz, he's not just a pencil pusher. There was a story with Max Bredos and Vince De La Rosa on the MVP podcast. He actually was instrumental in signing Giorgio Chiellini. It wasn't anything super complicated about it. It's just the guy is very active. He knows what he's doing. He goes to the right places, talks to the right people, and at the end of the day, LAFC are a very attractive club to play for. So the guy's just a proven winner all over the field. And so for me, the Galaxy hiring Kuntz, for me, that's a sign that they're taking things very seriously. The only thing I'm worried about is how do you convince the fans that Klein is no longer in the equation?
Yeah, I think that's kind of, when the supporter groups made their announcement about the boycott, it was like, they made it very clear that they don't want Klein to be part of the Galaxy organization. We've seen the slogan Klein out really gain popularity over the last 5, 6 years, right? I think, from their perspective, it's definitely justifiable for why they would want to see change, especially considering the cheating scandal that happened last December where the league punished the Galaxy. I think, if you're an LA Galaxy fan and, you want to know who Will Kuntz is, like this guy is, like you said, he's got a proven record of improving wherever he goes. He's just a bright person, a bright mind. And I think having somebody like that in the Galaxy front office is going to be a plus no matter what. I mean, this guy kind of just, left LAFC and joined the Galaxy, I think being able to identify that this team has potential, that a market like LA, you can do so much, bring in so many players, and do a lot to kind of not necessarily build a fan base because the Galaxy's had a fan base unlike LAFC, but kind of rejuvenate that in a way. And I think Kuntz bringing in that, doing that, coming to the Galaxy front office is gonna bring a lot of focus to the Galaxy club in general, whether that's the academy, whether that's the second team, first team. I think that it's gonna be a good in general, it's a good thing for the Galaxy, and I think if you're a Galaxy fan, you should be optimistic about that. I think if Chris Klein isn't running, sporting operations at all, he's focused on the business side where he's been proven to have success there, then I think if you're one of the supporter groups, I think that's a fair compromise to come back to the stadium, in my opinion.
Agreed. Let's move on to the actual game action. The Galaxy traveled to Houston this Saturday to play the Dynamo. The Dynamo are not a flashy side this season. In fact, had what, one non-set piece goal, meaning a goal that doesn't come off a corner kick or a penalty. Uh, they've been winning home games, but their past two home games they won both by penalties. Really, their danger man is Hector Herrera. He's in the 97th tile of progressive passes completed, passes attempted, and he leads the team in shots. Translation: they let him cook.
Exactly.
It's very interesting because our correspondent for the Houston Dynamo, Victor Ruiz, I actually got a hold of him and asked him, what's the deal with he actually told us about how the fullbacks might be an issue. Tate Schmidt, their left back, he had an injury in their last game, had to go. You know, very interesting. The right back for the Dynamo is a former player, Daniel Steris, who actually used to play center back for the Galaxy. Now, you might think that that's kind of a weakness, but interestingly enough, what they've been doing is they've been having him as a stay-home defender. They've been having Schmidt push up. And what this does is this gives the Dynamo defensive stability, but they also have the ability to let Hector Herrera cook, and they have a few other pieces like Coco, and they have that the new DP Ivan Franco, and they're interesting. But again, they'll be at home, they'll be motivated, and knowing Benny Ball, it could be a tough night for the Galaxy.
Yeah, I think for my preview in the coming days, I really wanted to focus in on that Dynamo midfield and the Galaxy midfield because, like you mentioned, right, they're letting Hector Herrera cook. They're letting him be the catalyst for this Dynamo team. They're letting him lead the offense, and he's got some good pieces around him in that midfield. One of their offseason signings, Artur, like he's been a great player on the ball. I think has around 90% passing completion percentage. Like that's
Big
incredible.
Archer fan.
They have he's such a very underrated player, and I think that's somebody that will definitely challenge the Galaxy midfield. Kogo Karaskia, I haven't watched him much, but when I see him, he just impresses me. He's a player who can, launch a through ball forward, lofted through ball. He's a guy who can play direct and get the ball into the feet of the players, whether that's on the wings or in the middle. Like he's a guy that will be able to kind of make that pass that nobody's expecting. So I think this midfield battle between Carrasquilla, Artur, Herrera, and Brugman, Delgado, and Puig, I think it's going to be so interesting. And I think that's going to be where the game is won or lost for both teams. And we know the Galaxy midfield has been great in performing in a lot of offensive metrics, defensive metrics. I think you need to really focus on the eye test. The Galaxy doesn't really blow you away defensively when you look at the stats. But I mean, they do all the little things like cover up the space, cover the passing lanes, be able to provide cover for Caligari, who likes to push up. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see which midfield is more disciplined and composed throughout the 90 minutes.
Yeah, specifically when I asked Victor what the Galaxy could, he let us know that if the Galaxy use width, that they can win the game, which is kind of there we go.
Yeah.
Still working out the kinks, guys,
But that sums it up. We've seen this, the wide players be so inconsistent throughout the year. I mean, Tyler Boyd, he had a good game last week. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of takes a step back this week. Just he's still building that consistency. We talked to him. I talked to him earlier in the week. He said he's comfortable playing on the left or right. He as a kid he learned to cross with both feet, and obviously that's great. But we got to be able to see a bit more production in the final third when it comes to those crosses and being able to kind of have more of those shots. I mean, of those passes lead to shots, and we saw that last week. Memo Rodriguez, we'll see if he maybe starts. He started the last two games. Instead of being on the left, he's on the right, and he's been a great support player for Caligari, who pushes up on that right. I think for Memo, I kind of wrote something today. I think it's going to be a great moment for him. This is a guy who joined the Dynamo Academy at 15 years old. Like that's the only place he's known as home. So I think it'll be great to see him return to Texas, where he's lived for a majority of his life, and be with the fans that would cheer him on for almost what something years. Like this is going to be a great game for him if he gets on there emotionally. I think he needs to have an impact and be able to show that he can cause some damage to his old team. Efrain Alvarez, I really don't know if we'll see him start. I mean, last game against Seattle, he was a 90 subbed when usually that's the player that Vanny would call on to kind of change the game. It's been definitely a hard season for him when he kind of declared that this needed to be his breakout year. But we'll see if he is able to play some minutes. I don't know. Douglas Costa, I'm pretty sure we'll see in the second half at some point. I think Vanny's very focused on getting him back into match fitness and being able to start games. I don't know how much he's progressed in that aspect, but I think it's gonna be there's options out wide, but are they good enough? And will they be able to do some real damage? Because we know throughout this 6 game sample size of this season, they haven't been able to do that.
Yeah, that photo of Efra with Keane holding the number 7 jersey, that feels like such a long time ago, and it's tragic because I mean, my intuition is that Vanny knows that this is kind of the year, and the club just really just wanted to give this kid a chance, and he's not performing, and at some point it just becomes a matter of his physical limitations, and maybe he's just not cut out for such a physical league, and in which case maybe you cut your losses, maybe sell him to a Liga MX team or figure out something if they want him right now. I mean, it's not a good situation. So maybe the Galaxy, seeing how well they performed in the 3-5 back again, so that they have a possibility of being able to control the midfield. Like I said before, they were cooking for 45 minutes, Judd and Joveljic. Perhaps you stick those two out, have them start, then have Chicha come in the match as a sub, maybe with like 30 minutes left to play. He doesn't have match fitness, and he hasn't played a month. So we got to get this guy ready for El Trafico. So maybe give the guy 30 minutes. Don't take it too seriously, and then go from there. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I think work him in slowly. I think that's the best option. I mean, he's definitely up there in age, and you kind of, not that he's like super fragile, but you want to be cautious with him. There's a long season ahead. You want to make sure he's able to recover well, and you don't rush him in because of the emotions and RL Trafico, right? I think he'll slowly, make a 20-25 minute cameo against Houston. I think Vanny's very focused on getting him back. I mean, again, he's a striker. It's not like he's going to be doing a ton of running at full speed a lot. But it's still great to kind of get you on the field, to kind of rebuild those instincts on the pitch that he's, known for and he made a career out of. So I think, it'll be good to see what the impact he has. It would be kind of funny if, Dejan goes out and starts as a lone striker, comes off the bench, and then Chicha scores. Kind of the roles reversed from last year, which I wouldn't be surprised. But nonetheless, I think he'll play a good amount. I wouldn't wait too much on how he plays. Again, he's just coming back. It's kind of like a preseason game for him in a way. He's been out for a couple of months now. Didn't really get to enjoy the preseason or play it too much. So I think this will be good for him to just get back into that groove.
Okay, Alex. I think we're done here for tonight. Let's get this Houston game over with so we can focus on El Trafico. I got a birthday coming up next week, man. What are we gonna do? We have to throw some sort of party or something. But
I told Mike off camera that I'll just get him like a traffic sign or something, for El Trafico.
We'll figure something out. We'll have a big party. But okay, we're kicking off. This is Mike Gray from the Striker. This is Alex Ruiz from the Striker. Take it easy, everybody. We'll see you at the stadium next week because we'll